I love this service. The darkness, the silence, the wonder. This night is the deep and abiding shame of Christian people in the eyes of everyone who is not a Christian. This night, we preach God dies. And they accuse us of worshiping a weak, a humble, an impossible divinity. Because what God would agree to die? Or they say to us, misunderstanding, that we worship a cruel God who, in order to allow us to be reconciled with Him, required the death of His own Son and abandoned and turned His back on Him, such that the Lord, in deep anguish, said that His Father had forsaken Him. And it seems to be so if we are not paying close attention. Indeed, the Lord on the cross does cry out, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? And no one understood. They heard Eli, and they thought He was calling for Elias, for Elijah. But the Lord was not calling for Elias, nor was He saying that His Father had forsaken Him. For as we heard in the first reading, again and again and again, He affirms to His disciples, the Father and I are one. He is in me, and I am in Him. So how could the Father forsake His Son when they are united in one essence, one being? And yet Christ says it. My God, why have you forsaken me? This is why we must pay close attention. This is why we read the Psalms. Because ages before the Lord was born, His forefather David, on a day of anguish, a day of betrayal, a day of pain, wrote those words. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from me? And with these words, He gave voice to the cry of the human heart in brokenness, in loss, in betrayal, feeling that even God Himself has abandoned us. David wrote it. David sang it. But David did not end there. The psalm goes on to reflect on the promises of God, saying, perhaps God has abandoned me because I am sinful. And then he says, but no, because my forefathers were sinful and you did not abandon them. You punished them in order to bring them back again. And you showed forth salvation to them and to all of us who are descended from them. So no, I must not be forsaken. And if I feel forsaken, then I will cry out in prayer and beg you to save me. And so he does. But the psalm continues, because having prayed, then David speaks in prophecy. In the same psalm that begins, my God, why have you forsaken me?" he continues and says, "You will show forth salvation not only to me, not only to my descendants, but to all nations." And the same psalm that begins, my God, why have you forsaken me?" ends, "Let God arise and let his enemies be shattered." Ends with the words that we do not say yet, the words of Pascha, the words of victory. So on the cross, the last words that the Lord utters, save for the final, tetelestai, it is finished. His last words are to repeat a prayer offered by his ancient ancestor a millennium before. We might say, why did he not repeat the entire psalm? But we know the answer. He had no breath, for it was leaving him. He was giving up the ghost. But in those days, they did not have chapters and verses. So he said the first line of a prayer written on the hearts of his people for generations, a prayer that speaks the brokenness of the heart of every one of us, as though to say, "You asked me to come. I am here." You feel yourselves abandoned by me. But here I am. I am with you. I endure all that you have brought upon yourselves. And the hope that David saw, even now, is made present before you. For if God has died, how can death stand before him? Therefore, in the quiet, in the darkness, in the apparent shame of our faith, we stand on the threshold of everlasting light and glory. And with quiet hope, we look to the coming of the day, to the coming of the light, to the coming of the Lord who has completed his work, so that the glorious salvation he is making for us even now may be manifest to us and in us to all the universe. Even in the darkness, we still say, Kali Anastasi. God bless you all. Go in peace to your homes. We will see you in the morning. Tomorrow, the royal hour